Oh,
Yoliso Makasi.
right. Let me check if Dr. Chipkin is still here. Let me just.
He is definitely still here.
Great. Great.
Can you see me?
Yes, I can. I've
Great.
been asked. I've been asked to request the participants to keep their faces on, and I've also been asked that those who are speaking to please show their faces as well, because we are beaming this live on Facebook, on YouTube, and other social media platforms. So good evening, colleagues who are joined today. We appreciate your response and your support over such a short turnaround period. I do want to confirm that we are here for the webinar that we are hosting. And can you imagine now my camera is off? We are here for the webinar that the New South Institute is hosting in partnership with SAPAM. And I think maybe first let me start by just acknowledging and thanking SAPAM, in particular Dr. John and his team who have been working with us, John Jaupe, or Professor John Jaupe, and the team that he has been working with. We've been working with. I had an opportunity to meet the team earlier on, and I did share our gratitude for the support, and also to congratulate SAPAM, because recently you have been accredited by SAQA, and now you can do some serious work around professionalization of the public service, I think including training as well, where possible, which is quite exciting news. We are here for this seminar, for this webinar that's looking at, the title is Towards a Professional Public Service Implications for the Amendment Bills. Without taking long, we would all recall that we have amendment bills that have been in the system since the 6th administration. The 2 amendment bills, which is the Public Service Amendment Bill, as well as the Public Administration and Management Amendment Bill. And these 2 amendment bills were passed by the National Assembly and referred to the NCOP. They are now at the level of the NCOP. They've gone through public hearings at the level of the NCOP. And tomorrow, I mean, in provinces, the NCOP referred it to provinces, and they've gone through public hearings. I think most, if not all, provinces have gone through public hearings. And the NCOP is now hosting tomorrow an oral presentation from civil society structures and individuals who are interested to make a contribution. And obviously some of the partners who are here today, like COSATU, would be presenting, and NSI as well will be presenting tomorrow. So we thought it's important to also just link up with our stakeholders once more, so that we go to the NCOP as a collective. I do want to acknowledge and thank our Deputy Minister, Madam Pinkike Kana, for blessing us with her presence. She is my former boss, and I'm quite happy. That shows that we're still working together, DM, that you are here, and I'm quite happy for that, for the support. And we also have, I don't know, man, I can't say Mr. I keep on wanting to say comrade Matthew Parks from COSATU, who we've been working with in my previous role as well at DPSA throughout the process of this legislation, because they had to be referred to NETLEC, and he is a very active player in those processes of NETLEC. And he also supported us a lot in terms of guiding in how we manage to work through that system and ensure that the legislation, the amendments are able to come through and go ultimately to cabinet, then parliament. And then we have Prof. Pacho. Prof is from the Northwest University. I'll never forget. I think one time I said University of Northwest, and Prof corrected me and said Northwest University. There's a difference between the two. Prof Pago is heading the School of Government there at the Northwest University, and is also leading in SAPAM. So we also have Dr. John, who's participating in the program. He's going to be doing a closing remarks. Dr. John Chaupe, who is the Executive Director for SAPAM. So on that note, I'm going to invite Dr. Ivo Chipkin, who does not want to be called a boss. So I'll just invite Ivo to please take the stage and share, do the welcoming and share as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. I think you don't want me to take the stage if that involves or if that implies singing and dancing. Even though I like to think that I have a great voice, I'm reliably told objectively I have a terrible one. So I'm not going to take the stage. But thank you very much, Lisa, my colleague, for organizing this event. And of course, it's a great honor and a pleasure to be in the company of the Deputy Minister of Public Service Administration, Ms. Pinky Kekana. I will refer to Matthew Parks as Comrade Matthew Parks from COSATU's the parliamentary coordinator, and of course Professor Ketebone Pago, who is the Director of Government Studies and Public Administration at Northwest University. It's a great pleasure to be in your company. And of course, what is so lovely about this particular webinar is that we have representatives from government, from academia, and from civil society. And I think in tonight's lineup, some of the most prominent and most important representatives of those various areas of government, civil society, and academia. I'm not going to take up much time, but I do want to give a sense of why this conversation is a really important one, and why I think we should all be thinking about and talking about the Public Service Amendment Bill. And I know in South Africa generally, unlike other parts of the world, I'm quite fascinated to discover how curious and interested the Brazilian public is in questions of public administration, so much so that their large daily newspapers often cover questions of public administration in their stories, which is very, very different in South Africa, where people's eyes tend to glaze over and people become uncomfortable and start shifting when the question of public administration comes up. And yet, of course, as we all know, questions of public administration are fundamental, not just to the basic architecture of the South African state, but also to the experience of every person in their day-to-day encounters with government agencies and their ability to access services and all sorts of other goods and goods and services. So we understand how key this is. What I would like to do is spend a few minutes just explaining the historical significance of this moment, and I'd like to put it into historical context and think of this as South African relationship to the US, which of course that's a relationship which is especially tense at the moment. But I think in all sorts of strange, unexpected, and awful ways as well, South Africa in relationship to the US offers a very interesting point of comparison. In the US today, we are hearing all the time, or very frequently, this notion of the dark state. And President Trump, together with Elon Musk and others, have been very forceful in ostensibly taking measures against this dark state. And what they really mean by this dark state is an American civil service, which they now believe to be functioning and operating independently of political control. And what they are therefore trying to do, from what I can understand, is to directly bring the public administration or the civil service in the US under direct political control. Well, of course, we know from the historical record that those sorts of interventions result in disaster in the medium term. And in South Africa, I think we're on the cusp of going in the other direction, and this is why this is so important. This reform, we are on the cusp of professionalizing our administration and establishing, for the first time in South Africa's history, really, a professional and autonomous administration. And this is why the Public Service Amendment Bill, in particular, I think is so important, especially Section 3. We know that from the apartheid period, at the end of the apartheid period, formal end of the apartheid period, the African National Congress, the new ruling party, inherited a public administration from the apartheid period, largely staffed by white male administrators, and in the homelands, homeland administrations, which it simply did not trust to implement the new policies of a progressive government. Not only that, many in the African National Congress believed, in fact, that the civil service, the public service, was a potential source of counter-revolution. So not just going to not implement ANC policies, but would actively sabotage them. And yet the ANC was constrained in that it could not simply fire apartheid-era public servants because of clauses agreed to in the negotiated settlement, some of the so-called sunset clauses. As a result, the ANC had inherited this large public administration, which it did not trust to implement its policies, and yet it could not get rid of. So what we know from right from the beginning, even prior to the 1996 Constitution, the African National Congress chose to politicize the public administration in a very particular way. So Section 3 of the Public Service Act of 1994 gives politicians, in particular the president, cabinet ministers at a national level, and provincial ministers, powers in two fundamental areas. They have powers over recruitment, so all recruitment is potentially done through a political process, unless the minister chooses to delegate those authorities. But ultimately, all appointments in the public service are political appointments, or rather, they are appointed through a politically controlled process. Second of all, politicians have control over operational decisions inside departments, resulting in what the National Development Plan once famously called tensions in the political administrative interface, by which it really meant was tension between senior officials and politicians over their ability to do their jobs. Essentially in South Africa, a Director General cannot do their basic jobs. They can't appoint anybody, but they can't make decisions around the organization of their departments unless those functions and responsibilities have been delegated to them by the politicians in question. And this has often resulted in tremendous conflicts and tensions within departments over the day-to-day functioning of those institutions. What the Public Administration Bill in particular does is that it resolves that tension in one particular way. It takes those powers largely away from politicians. It takes those powers away from the president, from cabinet ministers and MECs, and it empowers senior officials in the departments to be able to get on with their day-to-day jobs without requiring ministerial discretion. It establishes, if you like, the basis of an autonomous public administration for the first time really in post-apartheid history, perhaps in South Africa's history altogether. In the current moment, and this is where I'll end, in the current moment, there's much support for these initiatives, and I think they're absolutely fundamental. They will modernize and professionalize the administration, but there is some skepticism around them as well. Many are concerned, I think, within the Government of National Unity, for example, and in opposition benches, who are worried that they will be, if they come to power, they are inheriting an administration which is staffed by administrators which they themselves don't trust, and their instinct therefore is to repoliticize public administrations in the way in which it was politicized in 1994. My own view is that would be a great mistake if we went in that direction. Rather, we should go in the direction suggested by the amendment to the Public Service Amendment Bill, and that is begin the path of professionalizing an autonomous administration in South Africa. I think the stakes are very, very high. I think we're at a historic moment. I think if we get this right, we could really begin to turn the ship of the ship of state in South Africa around and set South Africa on a much more exciting and effective course. And on that note, I'm going to end. Thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure to be part of this event. Yolisa, again, thank you so much for organizing it.
Thank you, Ivor. Thank you very much for those words. I will bring back Ivor later when there is a discussion with the panelists, so that if anyone wants to engage on some of the issues that he's raising, you have that opportunity. I'm going now to call upon the Deputy Minister Pingikekana. She is the Deputy Minister for Public Service and Administration. She has a long history in politics, in the ANC and in government, from Limpopo days as a mayor, MEC, Deputy Minister. And she's a teacher by profession. She's an educator by profession. And those of us who worked with her know that she can educate her. So, Deputy Minister, we're looking forward to education today. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Ms. Yolisa Makasi, the Head of Public Service Reforms at the New South Institute, the NSI. Let me also acknowledge Professor Ivo Chipkin, Executive Director of NSI, Comrade Matthew Parks. We come a long way from COSATU. Professor Kidiboni Paho, the Director, School of Government Studies, the Northwest University. Professor John Mulepo, the Executive Director of SAPAM, fellow public servants, scholars, partners, and distinguished participants. We gather this evening not to only discuss legislative amendments, but to confront a defining moment in our democratic journey. South Africa's public service stands at a crossroads. The Public Service Amendment Bill, the Public Administration Management Amendment Bill, and the Public Service Commission Amendment Bill are not just legislative texts. They are architectural blueprints of a capable, ethical, and accountable state, a state that does not merely function, but serves optimally. If we are to realize the ambitions of a developmental state, one that addresses the inequalities of our past and safeguards the dignity of future generations, then professionalizing the public service must become our shared national mission. The tragedy of South Africa's post-apartheid reforms is definitely not that they lacked vision, but that they were not codified into law. As South African Law Reform Commission noted in 2024 report, in short, that many bold reforms failed because they lacked the legislative positioning needed. Now, with these amendment bills before us, we have the opportunity to ensure that the promise of our professional, meritocratic public service is not just a policy dream, but a reality. Let us be clear. A professionalized public service must be grounded into law. It cannot, unfortunately, be left to political whim on administrative discretion. Only then can we close accountability gaps, harmonize mandates, and restore public trust. So, why does this webinar matter? Tonight's dialogue, it's more than timely, it is urgent. Too many laws in our democracy have been known to falter, not because they were flawed in content, but more so because they were forged in isolation, consultation, collaboration, and co-creation are the cornerstones of democratic legitimacy, as we learn every day in a GNU. So, Program Director, this platform, convened by NSI and SAPAM, represents exactly the kind of deliberative engagement that our constitutional democracy demands. It is in such spaces that laws become living instruments shaped by insight, sharpened by critique, and owned by our people. In 1999, the DPSA introduced Senior Management Service, SMS, as a vanguard of professional public administration. With the benefit of hindsight, it was important for us to ask ourselves if we built a cadre of ethical leaders, or was it more the likes of powerful titles but little transformative power? The 2022 professionalization framework sought to reframe this. It aligned ambition with accountability. But again, frameworks like policies can only go so far unless we anchor professionalism in law. We will continue to recycle the very problems we think we fix. This is why it is important to ensure that the current slew of public service reforms to support professionalization are codified into law via the amendment bills. A core principle of professionalization is clarity of roles between political executives and administrative heads. The amendment bills give expression to this by aligning the Public Service Act more coherently with the Public Finance Management Act, the PFMA. Vesting administrative functions directly with heads of department is a long overdue correction. It will eliminate ambiguity, streamline decisions, and empower professional managers to lead without fear and favor. Public trust cannot be restored without public service performance. Despite growing expenditure on education, on health and policing, outcomes remain uneven. The amendment bills aim to address this by institutionalizing merit-based recruitment and selection, strengthening talent retention and succession planning, enhancing performance management and accountability, promoting horizontal mobility and skills portability across departments, and placing deliberate focus on the development of core leadership competencies. As Professor Masirumule, the Executive Dean at the Tshwane University of Technology, reminded us at the Policy Roundtable convened by the Deputy President earlier this year. I quote, "The amendment bills are central to professionalization, and without this becoming law, we are unlikely to promote meritocracy in the recruitment and selection of public servants, retention of good staff members, and not only those that cannot move, and improving productivity," close quote. As we mark Mandela Month, we must ask ourselves, what kind of state did Mandela dream of? when he signed the Public Service Act in 1994 and then the Constitution in 1996. I can with certainty say that it's not a state hampered by inefficiency, corruption, and low morale. His dream was of a state rooted in dignity, a public service built not on patronage, but on principle, not on politics, but on professionalism. These amendment bills bring us closer to that dream. They offer a legislative spine for the ethical, capable, and citizen-centered state our Constitution demands. My fellow South Africans, let history not accuse us of complacency. The opportunity before us is rare and urgent. We must mobilize civil society, labor, academia, and practitioners alike to ensure that these reforms do not die in the committee rooms or get watered down by expedience. Let us elevate them into law, embed them into culture, and defend them in practice. And as I close, as the late Justice Mokgoro, Yvonne Mokgoro, who was recognized for the contributions of Africanizing human rights and emphasizing the importance of Ubuntu in constitutional law, once said, and I quote, "South Africa's legal system remains a complex product of history, which is characterized by the continual conflict between the cohabitation of pre-colonial customary law with imported Roman Dutch law and British common law. It is therefore important to ensure that legislative reforms do not become a patchwork. Legislate dignity, professionalism, and service back into the soul of our democracy." Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. For those who have just joined us, we have started at 6 o'clock, and we apologize for starting before you joined us. You are welcome. We understand the evenings are busy, so you are welcome. I'd like to just, in the program, we have about a few minutes we've set aside in case there may be anyone who has a reflection based on the speech of the Deputy Minister and may want to interact with the Deputy Minister. We thought we must open that opportunity. So I will just see by a show of hands if there's anyone who would like to speak. I see Oscar Mampa, his hand is up. I'm going to hand over to you, Oscar. And please, if you can take at least 2 minutes, I'll be very happy so that we can give others. I'm going to note as well DH. I'm just trying to look for the full name. Sorry for that. Oscar Mampa, then Dumisani Hlope. I don't see any other hands. So I will hand over to you, two colleagues. Oscar, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Yes.
Oscar, if you can show your video as well and introduce yourself properly. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'm actually, my name is actually Mashile Palane. I'm working with Oscar in the office, so he's using this computer anyway. So I'm representing civil society Unmuted Coalition of South Africa. We are done that because we find that the space of civil society is shrinking in South Africa. So we want to revive and develop the old Sangogo. So that is how we are doing it. And then we supported by Kagiso Trust. My reflection is one question. You know, civil society in South Africa is actually, we find that is unethical. Every civil servant who want to steal in South Africa. And this is a problem. This is a problem, although we support them with some stipends or salaries, but we find that everyone will
steal. And Chair, I think I'm aligned. I think I'm aligned to the issues that 30 years. I think we have focused too much on the state capacity building. And the more I apply myself on this research, the more time we should also apply significant energy on the professionalization of the public service governance. I think in most cases, when we talk about building a capable state, we really don't focus enough on what will amount to a professional governance. What would amount to a development? How does a developmental state, besides the institutions and the policies,
has been my thorn to say, how do we look at ourselves first and say, am I professional, which is system?
Need to implement them. And in South Africa, as we speak right now, we are faced with the problem of arrogant leadership, corrupt leadership that constantly interfere in public administration. Then how are we going to deal with this situation? Because we can have civil servants, capable civil servants, but they are going to be corrupted by our political leaders.
Are you done, Bongikosi?
I am done.
Yeah,
I am done.
Thank you. You are raising a very interesting subject. My own thesis on the matter of corruption in the public service is that there is no leader in the public service, political leader, who can be successfully corrupt or corrupt the system without the cooperation of public servants.
Exactly.
But DM will answer you. I'm going to hand over to DM now. Thank you, DM. Over to you.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. I nearly said Gigi.
Gigi for life.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ms. Makasi. And let me also welcome the inputs by our participants. I think I'm excited that civil society is taking keen interest on the performance of civil servants and public administration. And we really want to see that happening. I had an opportunity to be a councillor, but also had an opportunity to monitor and evaluate government performance. And part of what was lacking was collaboration and working together of civil society organizations to be the eyes and ears of government, to raise issues of performance of government broadly, and how do we take the process forward. But I can tell the representative, Oscar Mampa Sangoko, that look, there can be a civil servant who want to steal, as Ms. Makasi is saying. there will be a corrupter and a corruptee. Those kind of things. And that's human element. But one of the things that me and you have to do, it's to create enabling environment for public servants, to allow them space to perform, to create enablers for them to perform, so that the productivity levels go up. I mean, I'm now in public service and administration. How embarrassing it is as we sit that we have an allowance to help public servants to have houses, but many of them can't access those houses. A father in the family can provide housing, and it has been sitting on our laps as public servants, and we were not looking at how best can we deal with some of these things every day. And that's one of my biggest problem, Comrade Matthew Parks, to say this was something that the PSCBC had to look at and say, if our people are in the red because of black tax, because of blacklisting and all these things, what are the other mechanisms that can we do to use the number? We can't have 1.2 million public servants and then the banks close the doors for us. We're unable to negotiate when we have that number. So these are enablers that must alleviate some of the burdens for public servants, for them to have that capacity to perform and do that. That's why we have quite a number of mental health and other challenges. And once you have that challenge of housing, then it's a challenge that they are a missing middle, they can't afford NSFAS, they can't be in NSFAS, but we are also moving slowly to say, if we are a missing middle, what are the things that needs to be done? I was in Kenya with the NSG. I can't remember if Prof was there from Northwest University. One of the presenters who was presenting there was that we now have to redefine corruption. If somebody is given a task and is not performing, it's corruption. We must start to say that and say, you are given a task, we are supposed to do this thing, you are not doing it, and you are creating a problem for other people. There are unintended consequences of non-performance and other things. We now have to come back and start to say, how do we redefine some of these things and how do we improve capacity of the state to deliver, but create enablers for our public servants so that they don't fall into that trap. A CFO cannot be made to sign something that he or she knows the PFMA does not allow. You can't. You are a professional. You went to school, you qualified, you are a CA, but the next thing you are doing something that you know, and you want to claim that Pinkiki can put you under pressure. It can't be. A no must be a no, that's it. And that's what we want to start to say. We want to instill in our people to say, look away on whoever wants to push you to do some of these things. I mean, we have learned lessons from the Zondo Commission. There was no way that a qualified CFO could be allowed to do what he or she was doing on some of these things. So these are the kind of things that we are now starting to say to our public servants. Put your foot down on some of these things, do what is right, but also the turnaround time for delivery for our people must also improve, because we are now empowering you, we are creating enablers, we are going to run with this thing of creating enabling environment. I mean, even in the police sector, there are no vents, there are no other enablers. You go to the Lavela police station, the toilet is not working, everything is not, but you expect those people to perform. What are we saying? So these are kind of things that we now need to look at to say, in as much as we want people to deliver, in as much as we want to raise the morale and want people to serve our people and be proud public servants. As government, let's do our bit, But public servants, you are now empowered by law to abide by certain conforms and reforms that we are talking to. So please do your bit. We will support you. And whoever wants to interfere will be exposed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DM. I see Vanessa Swanepoel hand is up, but I will prioritize you in the next segment of the discussions. We are going now to move to the next part. As we close this discussion or this part with the address by the Deputy Minister, one of the things Deputy Minister has said, and I hope that each one of us can pick up something they're going to use as a reflection point. I know that there's lots of public servants who are joined here today, is when the SMS and the MMS was established, the aim was to develop a cadre of ethical and professional leaders in government. So where are you? Are you a member of SMS? Are you a member of MMS? Are you that ethical and professional leader that when these changes when introduced as part of professionalizing the public service, we yielding the return as South Africa in terms of the investment that we have made into into creation of these levels and structures in SMS and MMS? I think it's very important that we also do our own personal reflections as people who are operating in these different spaces. On that note, I'm going to again ask that we move to the next item. In the next item, we have a panel of two colleagues, Comrade Matthew Parks, who professionalizing the public service or to reforms in the public service. And then we're also going to have Prof. Pacho, who will also look, I think, in amendments, especially around separation of roles and responsibilities. The Deputy Minister also touched on the issue, may not be able to cover everything. So I'm going to hand over first to Comrade Matthew Parks, and over to you, Comrade Parks.
Even service amendment bills, we have spent a lot of time as COSATU with our affiliates. I'm engaging on them at NEDLAC, or more portfolio committee as well, to really be useful, and also ultimately to help ensure we build a capacitated developmental state. And I think we really appreciate that we have a government which the bill actually say in simple layman's English. The bill actually say in simple layman's English. You often find, Deputy Minister, the English used for legislation is often very complex. It's not user-friendly to society. But I think for us, what are the key things which give us comfort as COSATU are some very practical issues which will impact upon workers in society. So there's the issue of the transfer of employees. So initially in the first draft of the bill, it basically gave heads of department a blank check to transfer any employee. And we were quite worried that it was open to abuse, that you could find that if I as an HUD want to extract sexual favors from a junior staff member, if she doesn't agree, I can punish her and have her redeployed to some far-flung place. And we were able with the department to make sure we put in place criteria, mechanisms, protect the rights of workers, but also give some flexibility to a department, etc. So I think for us that was a first positive thing, because you don't want abuses, you don't want to separate families. You need to make sure you handle it correctly. And I think for us we found the right balance. The caller earlier made a correct point about corruption in the state. So there's a useful clause in the bill which says that if you work for the state, you cannot do business with the state. And I think that's a correct approach, because if I'm a chief financial officer, I'm involved in procurement, it's not difficult for me to give myself or my family a contract, etc. And that's wrong, because that's corruption, estate capture, etc. And we all know the consequences. So the bill is quite clear on that. If you work for the state, you can't do business with the state. If we're talking about the issue of cleansing the state of corruption, that's useful, that's important. Chair, there's a very useful thing which, as a trade federation, which we are keen on. So there are provisions to empower the department to deal with the issue of unjustifiable disparities in public service. So unjustifiable wage gaps, etc. And that's useful because in the public service, you've got, if I'm right, Deputy Minister, about 16 bands from the Director General at the top to the lowest official at the bottom. But you have in some of the public sector entities a real ballooning of the executive pay. So you have, a CEO of a road traffic management corporation making more than the president of the republic, etc. So I think for us, this is a useful clause to begin to make sure we have a more fair wage regime. We reduce the wage gap. And again, Deputy Minister, we have the unenviable reputation as the most unequal society in the world because of the apartheid, colonial legacies, etc. So these are useful clauses to continue to put pressure on the state to say, let's see how to reduce some of the wage gaps. And again, people often make a false assumption that a public servant is a wealthy millionaire. It's not true. If you look at the salary of a police officer is, where they cannot even afford to buy their own home. The salary of a nurse is where she can't afford to buy her own car. She must take public transport late at night when it's dangerous. This is the need to do so. There's a useful clause there, Chair, about ensuring when the state engages in collective bargaining, like the wage bill negotiations, that the ministerial team has a mandate. That's common sense. You would assume it's always like that, but you will recall there was a previous court case when Treasury took the 2020 wage agreement to court, saying that it was not approved by cabinet, etc. So when we engage with the state, we want to make sure the state has a mandate to negotiate. You don't want to have negotiation which erupt into chaos, etc. That's important for stability, for collective bargaining, for labor market stability, etc. One of the issues here we had huge concerns about initially was it was a clause that said all public servants, not just directors general or commissioner of police, but even a nurse, even a cleaner, even a security guard, would be banned from holding office in a political party. And we felt that went too far. The first draft of the bill limited to directors general, to the executive management team reporting to the DGs from holding office in a party. We thought that's a fair and rational perspective, because I think we would agree you would not want a commissioner of police, a commissioner of the South African Revenue Service, a chief of the National Defence Force from holding office in any party, even our own parties. But we thought it went too far to say that a nurse, a cleaner, should not hold office in a political party, because that goes from a narrow limitation of rights to a constitutional ban of your rights. So we were quite pleased again, Chair, that when we engage with government departments, we're able to find each other and they say, let's stick to the original drafting of DGs, DDGs, etc. But let's not, go too far. So again, I think it's useful that we're able to find each other. And in fact, it was also helpful, Chair, that we were able to do that because that same law for municipal workers went to the Constitutional Court, and the Constitutional Court found recently, a few months ago, that the entire ban was unconstitutional and it should be a surgical ban to HODs and the senior management. Getting to the end here, and you can see we're a trade union federation, we look at rands and cents. So there was a relatively simple clause about recovery of overpayment to public servants, how does that get handled, etc. And we just simply wanted to make sure that when you recover the money, which is true, yes, you must have those overpayment, no questions. But let's make sure that HR, human resources, when they do so, they do it in a manner which takes into account the obligations of that worker. What can they afford each month? And again, that's in line with the National Credit Act, etc. And again, Chair, we're able really to find elegant wording to that effect, to also make it easier for HR officials to do so and to also take into account what are the affordabilities of staff, etc. So, Chair, I think one of the things which really gave us, comfort and heartened as we started coming to the end is that we had very ugly discussions at first in NEDLAC. I think maybe it was good that it was virtual because it was very heated. But the department listened to us. We're able to find each other. We listen to them. We're able to find what is the common sense that addresses all concerns. Their concerns around corruption, professionalization, our concerns around workers' rights, constitutional rights, around tackling corruption. And I think that's what we're able, when we went to the portfolio committee, actually to work as a single team, ourselves as COSATU, with our colleagues in SAMU, IMATU, etc., even SALGA, and even find further ways to address issues. And I think we found a department which said, no, they want to listen to society and they'll make a plan. And so that's why it made it very easy for us, Chair, to not only say we support the bills, but even to defend them. So we were keen when it's now before the National Council of Provinces to help support it going through. Because not often you find, Chair, just wrapping up, some departments will just simply say, COSATU, we hear you, you're interesting, go sit outside. What do you know? And I think here, Chair, there's a more of an effort by department to say, we hear you. So how do we find a solution to your concerns, and how do we also find a solution to government's concerns and to society's concerns? And I think that's why we came with a product chair, which we can now defend and own as COSATU. And I think it gives us confidence that we, with all of our faults, we have a government which listens to society. Even when we get irritated with them, they will still listen to us, and we'll work together to find solutions. But thanks, Chair. And hopefully I didn't talk too long. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Comrade Parks. You actually raise a very important issue around the coordination in terms of salaries and standardization and etc. between the different spheres. What I want to highlight to colleagues who are listening is that Comrade Parks focused a lot on the Public Administration and Management Act in terms of the amendments. Remember, we're dealing with two amendment bills, the Public Administration and Management one, as well as the Public Service Amendment. So I just wanted to highlight that for your attention. I'm now going to invite Professor Gidibone Paho, who the Public Service Amendment Bill.
The sentiment that is around this welcoming. So it is indeed, as Dr. Ivo earlier indicated, that in the in and year out speaks about the leadership level. And so that is what we have been saying. But let me just follow my notes now, Chair, so that I keep to time. Political leadership versus the question of public management role. And so these laws are essentially trying to find a way of separating these roles. So in other words, can we have defined in the context thrown out tonight
enabled to such an extent that who have actually opened up to ill discipline within the sector. And this for me becomes a key element, because even when we adopt the professionalizing of the public service, which I'm happy that the AG is almost jumping the gun, because they are almost using the professionalization framework as a key tool to check on key areas. And we've just gone through a grueling process of having to present to the AG as to us having to have stringent targets and outputs aligned to the professionalizing of the public service in terms of supporting the municipalities to be able to implement the professionalization framework. And some of the municipalities were actually presenting from a perspective of, but COGTA has not sent a circular to us as municipalities because we are directed by DCOG. This is more for province and not the municipalities. And our view was that it is for the entire public sector, and therefore we have been rolling out the programs, and you will participate, and because we need to have a reformed public sector, which they are part of, which I think the new inputs with the legislation would allow us to also further advance on this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Dr. Halima. I think you're raising a number of critical issues. I'm actually happy that KZN is really taking seriously at local government level and moving with the implementation of the professionalization framework, or building structures to ensure and integrating processes to ensure implementation. It would be useful to watch that and see how is it unfolding and how it is supported. There was Vanessa, but I think she's struggling with connection. I just want to read a few of some of the comments online, and then I'll come back to you, Mataiwa, Dr. Mataiwa Busieka. Then there's a few comments I want to read here. I'll start from Sibongile Mbeleki. Yes, DM, say no, and say why you are saying no, because you have prescripts to guide. And then Pumlani Dlamkile. Evening, it's Dr. Dlamkile Pumlani. Chair, I begin to see a bit of change in the public service, even though it's not that huge. The DPM is trying to restore hope, which has been lost from the past decade. We cannot overlook the work done by the School of National Government in South Africa in trying to capacitate the public servants with courses like ethics in the public sector, Nukela, and others. The NSI and SAPAM are also opening doors for dialogues that trigger new ways of making public policy better. The question is, do we have public servants who are willing to be part of this project that is taken to improve the public service? Apologies for a long point of view. And then the next comment is from Martin Colin. And it says, learning from how separation of responsibility currently in relation to the PFMA are used and or abused, it can be concluded that the powers of political principles in relation to public service have been leveraged to exert undue pressure on public servants. The amendment needs to be strengthened through other mechanisms, such as digitizing recruitment processes and establishing other mechanisms. Ohenza Modise, I fully agree with DM on the alignment of the work the three institutions are doing with regards to reporting, monitoring, evaluations, and auditing part from HESA. Dineo, good evening, DM. Coherence and collaboration between Treasury, DPSA, and DPME is crucial. Thank you. Henry Mkolisi Vilagazi. But how is this possible? Because the revised Z83 form now requires applicants to state if they are disciplinary proceedings they are undergoing. If they do not declare, they would have lied. Katle Khota Umasemula, thank you to the panel. My question is, how can we realistically speak of professionalizing the public sector when there is ongoing institutional decay of key state institutions that are meant to safeguard democracy. Without restoring the integrity and functionality of these institutions, won't nationalization remain a hollow ambition? That's Katlego Tau from Northwest University. Lucas Masilo, what is the progress with introduction of a single public? And Sibongile Mbeleki, the civil servants at SMS level believe that if it's HR personnel in their space, it must be HR doing the job. And if it is money, finance is responsible. As a result, mismanagement that happens, there is no accountability, consequence management on soft issues in the system. There are two functions that are highly regulated, yet line managers get away with things because the mass assistance to regularize whatever. Consequence management is really important. I'm going to stop here and come back later to more questions and comments. And I'll hand over to Dr. Mataiwa, and then I'll ask my panel to come back and just take some of the questions that they can take and some of the comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Oh, let me see if I can switch on my video. It's too dark. Apologies, it's too dark. I thought it's very bright here. Good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. I recognize the Deputy Minister, Matayo Busega from DPSA. Thank you. I still call you DG Makasi. You're still DG. Rapkin and colleagues from the trade unions, all protocols observed. Now, DG, if you can allow me, I just want to reflect on one dilemma that, and for the insights that we received from Kosatu and Professor Paho, as well as other speakers, previous speakers. I just want to zoom in quickly on the dilemma that was raised by Professor Paho, my colleague from university. We should be too about the amendments because laws without enforcement are meaningless. And of course, corruption thrives in a culture of impunity. So without that ethical leadership and consequence, as other colleagues have said or reflected, consequences for wrongdoing, even new laws, as we have seen in previous dispensation. So we have to look at the question of and ask ourselves about the question of moral decay, which undermines reform. So if public servants lack integrity, or legal changes won't stop fraud or other issues to do with cadre deployment or service delivery failures. So we have to ask ourselves, how can we inculcate even issues of meritocracy, which we think that amending the law to a larger extent may patronage. But we need to look at how does the public perceive, or the issue of public trust, which action, and that action must be visible. We are talking about visible accountability, and the bottom line being that legal are a step, but discipline, enforcement, and ethical leadership are, of course, non-negotiable if we have to achieve the result. And what I want to look at, I know Singapore has always been and professional and ethical public service. And one of their key pillars is to look at a long-term strategic planning beyond political cycles, where we have, and I'm talking from DPSA point of view, because at DPSA we have had so many changes. And if you have many changes in leadership, it becomes almost impossible to focus on delivery, because even within 5 years, addressing major changes becomes a challenge. So how do you look at non-partisan governance policies that focus on national interests not short-term political gains, and also look at future-ready policies where we look at regular stress tests to prepare for crisis as within the public service. That would be my reflection, DJ. I don't want to take too long. Thank you so much, colleagues.
Thank you so much. One of the issues that, the issues you are raising also have to do with the culture in the public service. And I think it's a conversation that we must be confronted with on how do we change the culture, because the issues of ethics, the issues of corruption, the issues of long disciplinary cases or no consequence management, all these things ultimately boil down into the culture of the organization itself. But I'm going to invite my panelists to please take any questions or discussion they may want to from the comments that colleagues have made. I will start with Comrade Matthew.
No, thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks, colleagues. Maybe just from my side, Halima made the point about local government. There are some provisions in this bill around local government, which we had a lot of discussions around. Those largely around the consultation process for collective bargaining and so forth, just kind of enshrining that. But I think, Chair, this bill won't resolve the issues of local government. Obviously, it's a different sphere of government. But I think the point that Halima raises is right. We're witnessing a crisis in local government municipalities. And, there has been many interventions over the years by national provincial government to try to fix things. I think one municipality, Ditsabotka in the Northwest, has been under administration about 4 times in the past decade, and it's still in a crisis. And a decade ago, Chair, you would find about 10% of municipalities in financial distress. Today, it's about 7%. And whichever metric you look at, service delivery, whether it's a collection of rates, whether it's the payment of workers' salaries or pension funds, is deeply concerning. We do need to have a very frank and honest discussion. And the new minister, well, not so new, but the minister and his deputies at COGTA, I think, are trying to look at for fresh eyes. But I think we do need to go towards a district development model. We have about 257 municipalities. Some of them are not financially sustainable given the rate space. You could rather look at some areas to consolidate them, but also to kind of properly resource them to make sure you attract the kind of skills, capacity you need. It would not make sense, for example, in a Beaufort West, that a municipal manager gets paid less than what a personal assistant of a minister gets paid. So it is a crisis, but there's also structural issues, etc. I think, Chair, just broadly on public service, so the bill is a useful intervention, but it won't resolve all the issues. I think the issues of this capacity state speak to skills development, or making sure we utilize the funds, the CETAs, to invest in this training of staff. It's also about making sure, as the Deputy Minister said, like in the police, you have about a half or a third of police vehicles not working at any point in time. In this police, we had seen a decline in the headcount by about 15% over the previous decade. At least now it's beginning to turn around. You can see in the Defence Force the consequences of budget cuts. So we need a bit of a shift from looking at the state as a burden to as an investment. Because if you look at the South African Revenue Service, when competent management was appointed, when corrupt elements were removed, when there was a filling of critical vacancies, when we invested in the infrastructure, you could see SARS delivering upon its mandate. And we should have the same approach to other parts of public service, be it home affairs, so you end queues for workers to collect IDs, be it education, so you reduce the teacher to the learner ratio, or filling of nurses and doctors' posts, etc. Similarly, we should not view paying these skilled professionals a burden, but rather, again, as investment, and also to make sure we retain these skills that the state and society invest in. And I think, also that all these points are good, but we also, I think there's the former DG Yoleswa is making the point. We have to do the issue of corruption. Most parliaments work very hard, and those who still, I think we need to give them support, but that also means to give support to the NPA, to the SAPs, to the courts to deal with this cancer. But I think, Chair, if you look at the examples of SARS, it shows you a model of how you can rebuild the state and how the state, which is modernized, will help to grow the economy, help to create jobs and reduce poverty. So I think let me stop there, Chair. And yeah, thanks, Chair, member, colleague.
Thank you, Comrade Matthew. Prof. Pacho?
Yes, I'm here, Chair. So a few points. I really also want to welcome the feedback from colleagues and the DM. Obviously, this is intense while engaging, but a bit provocative as well. The other point, Chair, that I picked up here is, and which is a very important point, I think Capello has raised this issue of the question of digitizing. And I think it's a very important point that these changes, if we nurture them properly and take it from there, we should be able to see them as a catalyst to not just only professionalize the public service, but also to fully digitize it. And I think when we digitize the public sector at large, it brings in a lot of accountability. People know that there's a digital footprint on whatever they watching. But when we still rely largely on on a paperwork, that is going to be a bit of a challenge. One point, Chair, that is very close to my heart. I think you have not read this. Is Fua's point about the merging of municipality that is coming. I think I'm you know, as an academic, as a citizen, I don't think this solves our problems. In fact, what we so my university is now in a municipality called JB Max. This is a merger of two municipalities. It is a Ventersdorp municipality and Klokwe municipality. So they merged two municipalities. So the Klokwe municipality was financially viable, very sound, very strong. And then we saw the merger with the challenges of the former Ventersdorp municipality. And what has happened now is the collapse of the entire system. So we have not seen a positive development across the country, by the way, in cases where you have seen mergers. So I would not be moved that the merger is a solution. In fact, if you reflect, if we really, I think we don't need to do a political reflection. We need to do a proper, thorough, systemic reflection that is very scientific, that is very technical. The merger is a political arrangement. I don't think it is going to solve the kind of problems that we are dealing with tonight of professionalizing the public service. But I think it's a matter for another day, Chair. I just thought, let me touch a little bit on that. The last part you said was comes from you as well, Chair, and Dr. Mataiwa, around the culture of the public service. And I think we should find a way of using these current changes to say, what kind of a new culture do we want to see in the public sector, and how do we go about it? And there are so many ways we should be able to intervene from with the civil society, with academia, to say, how do we instill a new culture so that these documents are not just papers, but that they are living documents and that they bring meaning to South Africans. So I like that point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. I think I didn't read everything that was written by other colleagues, but I think we are a little bit running out of time now. We promised to be done by 8 o'clock. So we've taken notes of a number of things that colleagues have raised. There's questions that have been asked, and I think it's not a question we can answer right now, but again, it's a reflective question. Do we have public servants who are willing to be part of this journey to improve public service? And then I think also there's a comment that talks to the need to ensure implementation, strengthen amendments by ensuring implementation of existing policies as well. And then there's an issue around alignment of work, bringing in the AG to support professionalization. In fact, I'm very happy about this. When I was still in government, the AG really had a very good plan to support professionalization and also from an audit perspective. And I hope that they are still doing that great work because that oversight is very important as well. And then somebody's talking about institutional decay and how do we hope to professionalize when we have institutional decay and etc. And I think what is important is to say, let's professionalize and deal with that institutional decay. The guidelines and everything is out there. All that we need to do now is to act and is to implement. There was a question about the single public service. I think that my understanding of the public admin management bill also aims to bring in some aspects of a single public service within the context of an autonomous local government sphere of government. So it's more at strengthening coordination and sharing of information and sharing of systems between the different levels of government more than taking over local government, because we must respect the autonomy of local government as clearly defined in the Constitution. And the last point I picked up as well is the importance of professional bodies to professionalize. I did say earlier on that SAPAM has now been accredited by the South African Qualifications Authority, and so they have now a responsibility to really work into the space of professionalizing the public service and professional bodies and around how this professionalization unfolds from the point of bringing in professional bodies. I think that is an important conversation. From my side, I think I'm going to just invite now Dr. John to give closing remarks for us. And I do want to say, colleagues, that we are in engagements with SAPAM because we think that there is value in having a series of discussions around on reforms and bring in other partners. And DM raised the issue about the Public Service Commission bill. We did not Service Commission bill, DM, but we thought we will have a specific session just to look at it and also invite the Public Service Commission to be part of that conversation. Prioritizing these two bills specifically because tomorrow we will be presenting virtually to the committee that's responsible for public service and administration at the NCOP. I have shared the link for the meeting with colleagues from. I think it would be useful to distribute it widely so that as many colleagues as possible can be part of the engagements and listen if they participate. I don't even know if there's still space to participate because there was a process of submissions, written submissions, and now there's oral presentations. But I think it would be useful to have colleagues as possible. When I participated on behalf of NS provinces between March and July, or March and June, I noticed that public servants were absent in the debate in provinces. So it's like we're leaving this space to other people. Public servants are leaving this space to other people to decide on their behalf. And if you look at the profile of the public hearings, it's mainly people who have time during the week not to go anywhere, likely not working, not engaged anywhere, and not even very much aware of the content of the bills themselves. But they are there because of a public participation processes. But from a point of real value, real insight, I think that the absence of public servants in those engagements really created a gap. And I do want to encourage colleagues. I've seen that the Public Service Commission bill is also going through public hearings in provinces. I saw last week they were in Gauteng. I think it's important that we track these things and we participate as public servants. We are members of communities first before we're public servants. Dr. John, I want to hand over to you on that note. Thank you.
No, thank you, DG. Thank you, Memakasi. And then I think we really need more of these particular engagements. And it's a challenge to you that maybe through the New South Institute, we should be able to have this kind of engagements. And as always, SAPAM is willing to collaborate and to work with various stakeholders to have such a meaningful conversation. And colleagues, I think as we draw close to our conclusion today, it is my honor and responsibility to express our deepest appreciation to all who played a very fundamental role this evening's engagement, which was themed around towards a professional public service implication of the amendment bills. And first and foremost, let me thank the Deputy Minister of Public Service and Administration, Mme Pinky Kekana, for her thoughtful and incisive led address. And I think the reflection have grounded our discussion today and reminded us of the urgency and significance of the legislative reform process which is currently underway. And I must agree with the Deputy Minister that SAPAM as a professional body and also civil society have a huge role in shaping the legislation for the benefit of our society. We are also equally grateful to our distinguished panelist. I'm not sure if I should call him Comrade Matthew Parks. The last time I called a person leadership comrade, I was dealt with. But I think Memakas, I'm very safe to call him Comrade Matthew Parks from COSATU, and our comrade Professor Gidiboni Paho from the Northwest University, who also is the chief editor of one of the prestigious journals in South Africa, the Journal of Public Administration, which is housed by the South African Association of Public Administration and Management, for the analytical perspective on the institutional and labor dimension of public sector reform. Your contribution, colleagues, have helped clarify not only the intent of the amendment bills, but also the practical and political complexities of implementing such bills. To the New South Institute, especially Dr. Ivor Chipkin, we express our sincere appreciation for your leadership in organizing this initiative with your team and for your ongoing commitment to fostering evidence-based policy discourse in the public sector. Dr. Chipkin, I also challenge you to play part to the SAPAM annual conference, which is taking place later this year, particularly as a partner. Special thanks to Meme Kasi, our program director, for steering these proceedings with such professionalism and clarity. Enkosi Meme Kasi. To our audience, comprising senior public servant, I've seen Dumisani Thope, Nyuko Mabunda, I've seen the CEO of PCTA, Mebonkel Rumo, I've seen Tata Mataiwa from DPSA, and many other colleagues, Professor Halima, DPME colleagues, Morakani, and many others, legislators, academics, civil society, and students. Your participation and engagement are what makes this conversation meaningful. We hope today's dialogue has not only informed, but also inspired the renewed commitment to building a professional, capable, and ethical public service. It is important to remind you, colleagues, that policy and legislation are only as effective as their implementation. So it is upon us as scholars, practitioners, active citizens to ensure that the principles of good governance, accountability, do not remain theoretical ideas, but translate into lived realities across our public institutions. Lastly, colleagues, I'm reminding all of you to join SAPAM and also to attend SAPAM. I hope Mema Kasi will see everyone in this particular platform in Toyando. Thank you all. May this particular momentum generated here today continue to shape this constructive change in the public service. I challenge the New South Institute again to have this particular series with SAPAM and other strategic partners to really debate and debunk on various topics that informs policy changes in South Africa. I thank you.
I just want to say the pressure is, and I want to say Prof. John, that those young people in your office, we're working very well with them. They deserve a salary increase. Very much, colleagues. We will meet again. We will communicate. As I invited you, or as I opened to say tomorrow we're at the NCOP. It would be nice if we don't go alone. I've shared the link with the colleagues at SAPAM and colleagues at some of the colleagues I have in case they want to observe tomorrow if they can participate. I don't know. It's not a meeting, it's Parliament, but I know it's a public meeting, so I'm sure everyone is welcome. Thank you, colleagues, very much. We will keep in touch.
Dinner is served at Dumisani Lopez's house.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Dumisani, for...
Yeah, it's open and about to.
We trust you with it. Thank you, colleagues, and bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, colleagues. Good night.
Bye. Thank you, Prof. Thank you,
Good
Prof.
night. Good night.
Superman from UKZN.